From corporate security to private equity, Jack McKenna has built Prussian into a go-to name in digital intelligence, investigation, and risk advisory. As CEO since age 25, he steered the company from zero revenue to a multinational operation, protecting Fortune 500 leaders, investors, and private clients from cyber, physical, and reputational threats. He's here in Las Vegas, meeting clients, tracking risks, and staying ahead in an industry where the stakes couldn't be higher. Jack McKenna joins us now on The Disruptors.
Welcome, Jack. I've got Jack McKenna on today in Las Vegas, and I'm actually pretty excited about this interview. You stay at Fontainebleau actually quite often. You said you just love this place.
Absolutely. Could be here either way.
That sounds good. Jack, why are you here this week? And first, before we go into it, we're going to talk a little bit about Prussian, but why are you here this week?
Sure. So this is my annual 2 weeks in Las Vegas, and there's nowhere I'd rather be than here at the Fontainebleau, certainly here with you. Last week we had ISC West, which is a corporate security conference, and then I stayed the weekend, and then now I've got DealMax, which is a middle market private equity conference. So as you know, the company touches a lot of different verticals and client types, so you got to meet them where they're at. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's cool. 2 weeks is a long time to stay in Vegas. I've done that before, and I have to tell you, I'm gasping to get out when that happens.
We're on the back end here. So.
Hey, talk to me a little bit about Prussian, the genesis thereof of Prussian,
Sure.
Kind of how you came to be. I find it to be a fascinating business because I think the backdrop of what this company does and what you do is growing at leaps and bounds for maybe some of the wrong reasons. But I'd like you to talk about that a little bit.
Sure, and you and I have known each other a long time, certainly at the start of the business, and you know better than anyone, today's business, Prussian, is not the same as it was several years ago when I took over, even before then.
And by the way, before we get started, Prussian started as a zero revenue business. So, Jack, you're also a very young man and kind of watched you grow up through it. So maybe kind of go through some of the phases and where you're at. Maybe start backwards, forwards. Where are we at today? What is Prussian?
Sure. So today, Prussian is a digital intelligence, investigations, and risk advisory services business. So we support multinational corporations, attorneys, and investors primarily, and then some private clients, with all sorts of investigative services, risk management services, typically related to cybersecurity, physical security, or just pure intelligence to help their business. So that's why I'm here this week meeting with our clients. And I didn't start the company. It started as a government contractor, and then it's since developed into what we have today. But it's been a long, interesting journey to get here.
So companies, to simplify it, come to you for what?
Typically, it's to know more about the people and the other companies they're working with. That was certainly the genesis of the company. But as you referenced with some of the recent events with the unfortunate assassination of the United Healthcare CEO and others like it, clients were using the same capabilities that we were using to vet people and to do kind of like due diligence and background checks, more for just proactive risk mitigation and intel gathering. So it's developed more into that stuff, whereas previously we weren't really playing in that space.
Is it safe to say that we don't, I mean, this sounds kind of screwed up, but is it safe to say that we don't know what our digital footprint is out there? I mean, are you surprised when people kind of go through that forensics on who they are, or when you're doing homework and go, did you know you're this, you're that?
I think people assume there's a lot out there, but they're shocked at exactly how much.
Yeah.
But people always assume that I'm one of those types that's going to like use a flip phone and live out in the woods. It's actually being in this space easier because now I know everything that's out there.
And you clean that up.
We can clean it up or tell you how to mitigate the risks that it presents if you can't clean it up, because some stuff is just going to be out there. And so it's important you know what's out there so you can make some changes and try to avoid disclosing too much.
And that's what people come to you for.
Yes, lately, but it's also to do other types of investigations and look into people.
I've always been fascinated by this, though, because I'm always under the belief that no matter how much you clean up, someone can break in. And I always feel like it's almost a never-ending spring, so to speak, where, as while you're cleaning up one dike, another one shows up and another problem. How do you advise your clients in that manner?
Well, everyone's situation is different. So what I'm going to do for a celebrity might be different than what I do for a Fortune 500 CEO, which might be different from a Fortune 500 controller or someone who's not as much in the public eye, and then someone who's done really well in their business but isn't super well known but has assets to protect. So it's going to depend.
So when you were talking about that unfortunate situation with the assassination of the CEO of the healthcare business, what were people calling you about, and what were they asking you for? I mean, I find that as a kind of a random event. So how would you prevent that, or protect the particular client from a potential situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't want to be in the ambulance chasing business. So when that happened, we didn't get called because I called other people.
No,
Fortunately, we built up a nice reputation, and it was an
But
unfortunate
what I'm trying to
situation,
drive at is what was their concern,
Yeah.
and why were they calling you? So it wasn't the ambulance chasing
Sure.
situation, but there's a disconnect for me because I don't really quite understand how those kind of events can be prevented. So I would like to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, and I don't know that they've established that there's any one thing that could have prevented what happened, but I think what would definitely happen is the board would go to the general counsel or the corporate security team or whatever and be like, what are we doing to protect our executives? Not just the company, but specifically the executives. And a lot of them didn't have good answers. So they were coming to us because we were known in that space for providing proactive intel to help companies out. And then fortunately, we had built this capability to help specifically.
Can you
for
give me some
executives.
more specific examples on like preventative issues and how you could, I wouldn't say necessarily prevent something like this from happening, but where's the value to that conversation? Because what you're saying is that these companies don't have these types of protocols.
Yeah.
All right. So give me an example of some of those without giving away the
Yeah,
the secret
sure.
sauce.
And if a bad guy is going to do you harm, the first thing they're going to do is Google you or look online. And so that could be harm in the form of a cybersecurity incident or physical security incident, like you said, or even some other reputational stuff. So basically what we want to do is educate corporate security teams and the executives themselves with what information could be found about them online. And if it can be taken down, great, we're happy to do that. If not, okay, here's how you mitigate risk, knowing that that's going to be out there, whether you do it or not. And then going forward, how to prevent unnecessary disclosures that could be used for the wrong reasons. I'm happy to give you examples about that.
Please.
So one thing in particular is social media. So I think now people generally understand that you shouldn't disclose too much personal information online. I would
Or
hope
where you're
people
going.
understand that, or where you're going.
Yeah.
But what people forget is what people in their inner circle are doing and how that information affects them. So part of our assessment that we might do is look at what your family's up to, what your children are up to, and then help educate you on how that might affect what you've got going on. A lot of things too come up in breach credentials. So if you've had a LinkedIn account or if you sign up for something on a website, a lot of times those companies suffer attacks and then that data ends up somewhere. So that could be passwords, it could be bank account numbers, it could be all sorts of different things that people don't appreciate is public, but for sophisticated threat actors is public. So.
And what you're saying is the bad guys kind of triangulate all that crap.
Yeah.
And then they figure out where to attack you and they look for that vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of...
Yeah, and if you use a password that's not very unique, you might be able to show, okay, I use that on, this silly website.
You mean like my password of 00000?
I always say if you
11111.
if you remember any of your passwords,
yeah.
it's a problem.
Okay.
You should not remember any of your passwords, and then use a password manager or whatever. So it's that kind of stuff. Or we were doing a case for a very public Fortune 500 company, and their head of government affairs was very active on Twitter in the political realm. He did not realize that a lot of his likes and activity was actually public because he didn't turn off that function on Twitter. And so it's not necessarily bad, but he's the head of government affairs. And so if somebody wanted to show that this company was leaning one way or the other, or however else they could spin that, it was bad that he didn't know that. So we found it, and then we showed him how to remove that. And so the content is what we wanted.
And this kind of dovetails a little bit into when companies are also hiring companies, not companies, individuals, and they start saying, okay, we like you, we love your resume, that's what's on paper. Are you asked to do some background checks on these types of people, or is that not a mainstay business?
If you want to do a deep dive, that's absolutely what we do. We don't do the volume searches, but to your example, if somebody really wants to know what's going on about an executive they're going to hire, they would call us. Now, I will say, on the hiring side, there's a lot more regulation about what you can use to make a hiring decision. And so sometimes you do the best you can, but then it's, all right, you're in place. What else can we do and what else can we figure out? So we kind of approach it from both angles.
Jack, we've been hearing, the show is a lot about disruption, okay, innovation and so on and so forth. And I've often invoked AI into the conversation. And, some people say AI is hype, some people say it's not. I'm of the argument that AI is transformative. Is AI affecting your business, or are you embracing it, or how? If so, how are you using it?
Yeah, I mean, at our base level, it's professional services and consulting. So it's we get asked to do something, we look into it, we prepare a report. That's most of what we're doing. So we're looking into it and using it more to make ourselves more efficient, do our work. I'm less convinced that the current state of things can replace the analysis that goes on, but I think it can make it much more efficient.
Well, I think it can bring you up to speed to do the analysis. So the speed of what you analyze, that's what I've often been a proponent of, that AI is not necessarily the decision maker, but it allows you to get quicker to the decision as opposed to having 6 or 7 analysts trying to parse through a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and one of the future things with the company is to not move away from, but expand upon the intel gathering that's been our core and move into the risk advisory. So understanding AI so we can help other companies figure out how to use it, but then also protect against it. And in the cybersecurity space, you have to be aware of that because the velocity and the danger presented by AI enhanced attacks.
Or fake news. For
Absolutely.
Everyone's been talking about fake news lately. AI has the propensity to be a fake proponent of data and use. And how do you analyze that?
Well, just understanding it conceptually can help you better mitigate risks that it presents. So even just being aware and showing clients examples of how fake news or fake videos or deep fakes or whatever could be used against them is good because it's on their mind then and they can be aware of it in the future.
I want to pivot a little bit because Jack, how old are you?
31.
Okay, that's a young man.
Doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, trust me, I'm much older than you are. Talk to me about some of the challenges of a young president, CEO, in a business that seems to be evolving on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the lessons that you learned because when did you become CEO? How old were you? You were a young man.
25.
25. I remember that day, actually. I said, welcome aboard. Here's the pool, jump in. And you're like, okay, how do I do that? As an individual who's now been a leader for 6 years, what are some of the lessons learned for the audience where you might be able to impart upon them some of the things that you learned that from a leadership perspective, and how have you evolved, and how's that made you even a better leader today?
So in the beginning, we were not talking about cool topics like we're talking about today and how to talk to clients and use AI and stuff. It was a turnaround operation, and we had a lot of issues to go through, and it was a company very much in flux. So that was not always the most fun, but some of the decisions we made at that time allowed us to be sitting here today. So I'm very happy about that. This is not super scientific, but I'm kind of a gut guy. I think part of that is I've had great people in my life, family, friends, all that stuff who have kind of impart those right lessons. So, how to build a relationship with someone just at that base level. I was given advice, which a lot of young professionals are, and the advice is well-intentioned, but sometimes if it's not exactly the right thing to do and it's just what other people have done, it can be alluring to believe that person because they're older and they've been in the world a long time. But I don't know, like just some of the base level cultural things we built are the entire reason why we're here today. And the business that we have today is radically different than when I took it over. So I'm kind of a gut guy. I don't know how best to say it.
Well, I mean, is an obsessive business. It doesn't end at 5. I mean, how much do you work?
Well, I don't stop working. Okay. I'm not a vacation person. I'll go, but if you're going to reach me, that's just how I operate. I don't necessarily think it's the best thing for your work-life balance. But for me, if I wasn't doing that stuff, I would be more anxious.
Right.
So I don't really stop, but I think you owe it to your shareholders and your staff and your clients in the early days, especially if they're taking a chance on you. You got to be available. So I think we're very good at agreeing on the principles. I'm client obsessed. I will help anyone with anything they call us about. If it's not something I can do, I'll find the right person for them. That's just like I'm obsessed with that. So I think that translates into growth.
Any advice you can give out to some young CEOs out there who might be struggling or whatever? And then number 2, the other question that I have is, a lot of younger leaders, you have to kind of dare to be different. One of the questions I want to evolve us to is what's out there that maybe other of your competitors are scared to go after, but you're doing it. And do you think age kind of plays a role in that because you are younger? So, and then by the way, I'm an older individual. I take a lot of risk, but I've noticed a certain mewing effect. When you get older or more established, you want to take less risk. How are you taking advantage of your competitors because of your age?
I think part of it was I've really only worked at Prussian. I mean, I did some internships and stuff, but I really only worked at Prussian. So I was an analyst, a researcher before I took over as CEO. So I actually saw how the work got done and how the clients interacted with us and all that stuff.
You were being courted by the FBI. You were also an incredible student. You also speak, fluent Mandarin.
Not as much these days, but in the earlier days, sure.
We may need you now, okay? Especially, with this whole tariff conversation.
Sure.
But do you feel that background and that training was beneficial to you in this particular role? Or like you said, you don't really use your Mandarin much, but I gotta believe that some of that training or some of even that background has helped you in this particular environment.
Well, I would tell someone, if you're in college or you're looking to differentiate yourself, becoming well-versed in a language is huge. That's the only reason why I got the job.
Yeah,
it's because I had that language skills and I was hired to do the research. But to be transparent with you, I think the lessons that I learned from a lot of my parents, my mom in particular, because she's in sales, she's a realtor, she's been extremely successful. The lessons about how to build a relationship with someone, I think that is like the core of why we've been successful, because I could be selling washing machines. You know what I mean? It's right. A trust thing. And that's not all that they trust me, but we've built a culture of trusting each other. We trust people that we hire, and then we build a relationship that the clients can rely on. So I think in my business, that's been huge. And I don't actually think it's been the academic background that's taught me that.
Now, I followed Prussian. It's had its ups and downs. Mm-hmm. How many employees did you have, and how many do you have now?
We actually had way more than we needed in the beginning.
Right,
so
correct.
I actually kind of hate that as a metric that people use.
No, I'm actually purposely asking you that question.
Yeah, I mean,
because another reason why this show exists is we're also trying to educate people who are startups. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've often seen when a startup gets a lot of money is they want to Elon Musk the thing. We're going to be the next Uber or whatever.
Sure,
and so they get all this flush capital and they end up hiring a ton of people. I'd love to kind of talk to you about, because that's a difficult conversation to do. Mm-hmm. You had all this stuff. I think you even had a kitchen at one point in time. You know what I mean? And then all this space. Then you had to contract, and now you're expanding. I kind of like to kind of hear that peak valley peak again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is not in every case, but certainly I've seen companies when they raise a lot of money or whatever, they got to spend it, and you don't spend it in the way you would if it was your money. And so I can see where that can be a problem. Now, other companies have raised money and they had to develop what they're doing. That's totally fine. But in our case, I don't think we were hungry. I think that we kind of felt like it was, forgiven or for granted that we would get the business when it's a competitive landscape and nobody's waiting up at night thinking about how they can help Prussian, even if they like us.
I understand.
Is
there a lot? I'm assuming there's a ton of competition.
I've sort of developed services that lack competition specifically for that reason.
So you're creating.
There's some, but you got to create your own market. And I think just what people weren't doing was listening to the clients. They kind of developed. All right, this is how we're going to go to market. We're great at this, and they would really talk about their background. Or I was the CIA or the FBI, or I've done all this stuff. That's all fine. You can do that stuff. But the best thing you should do, especially in the consulting business, is listen to your clients. If they want to call it X, Y, and Z, just call it that, yeah. And then meet them where they're at. So I think we did a good job of listening to the clients. And then when I would hear something being pitched or being discussed, and the client didn't really get it, then we'd sit back a bit. All right, what is this? What's missing here? And then we kind of build the pitch after that.
Something I've been curious about for a while is because you now kind of have a global footprint. I actually believe you have analysts and assets in Ireland. Mm-hmm. Okay, why Ireland?
I didn't start that. I inherited that operation,
but it's grown.
Yeah, it's grown because some of this proactive intel, protective intel that we've been doing requires service outside of core business hours, and it's easier to do overseas because we can get some coverage there, and then we get language skills and we get a great market to kind of expand elsewhere in Europe. But what I've learned through that process is even in Ireland, you go international, you add complexity. So it sounds really sexy to be like, oh, we have all these offices and all these areas or whatever, but you gotta get your core first and be prepared for the complexity.
Do you have to travel out there a lot?
I don't, actually. Probably once a year.
Okay, not bad.
To see our team, but almost all of our clients are based in the United States.
How big is your team out there?
It's about a dozen or so people right now, but it was couple and not too long ago. So it's growing, but as I said, I want to be super efficient. And so body count is great. We're going to hire people, and we're hiring now. But I don't just hire to hire. We want to be efficient. And I tell people, I'd rather pay you more if you work harder than go and keep hiring people.
Fair enough.
That's how we've done it.
The future. I'll be candid with you. One of the reasons why I had you on the show is I'm a little nervous about it. And maybe that's primarily because I see so much information out there, a lot of misinformation. We even see in the news, often being used as fake news or whatever. And it's probably an overused word. But what I'm mostly getting afraid about is just the amounts and the reams of data that's coming at us, and the inability to really interpret what that data means. And we see it in the markets all the time. The public markets, the private markets are another thing, and then we are almost becoming tokenized. In this society that just seems to be going faster and faster and faster. When you look into the future and you say you have these what I call these little mini moats, where you say, what are people talking about what their anxiety is, and how are you addressing that as a CEO of a company that's primarily involved in this space?
Yeah, so whether we're helping somebody in a reactive basis, so a background investigation or investigating fraud or whatever, or proactive, doing the online presence assessments,
Right.
We're beholden to the information in the public domain.
Correct.
At the end of the day, unless we're tapping into sources, which happens sometimes too. But we always start with what's in the public domain. So.
But that's kind of more of I'm not sorry to interrupt you, but that's kind of more in the call center type, will react. What do you see out there as kind of a existential threat to the individual's identity and so on and so forth? And where do you think that need exists, and how are you addressing that market?
Well, what I meant by that is people don't appreciate what's out there. And so they know there's a lot of data, but they actually underappreciate it. There's way more out there than they realize. And so if you don't understand what's out there, you can't mitigate the risk. You can't get the insights that you want. So we're trying to build solutions that address people on both ends, reactive and proactive, and we meet people where they are. So I really think there's so much data out there being released, being consolidated, and then in some ways being obfuscated. And so just understanding how that data works, where it exists, and how to find it is really important.
Do you have full-time analysts just going through this database to say, hey, look, here's some potential 4 or 5 different problems that are emerging and so on and so forth, and then how do you address it? And then do you go out to your current client base? How do you communicate that out?
So a couple of things. Number one, yes to all that, but also staying abreast of how it changes, because sometimes the data is administered by people outside of our control. So they're going to change the way they make it public and whatever. So there's that. But then also trying to figure out how we can collect our own data, because I don't want to be reliant on software providers or third parties to get us the feeds that we need. If there's opportunities to go collect it on our own, we'll do it. As we've already started doing that. We actually spun out a separate company that's licensing that data now for our clients. So I'm data obsessed, and that's where I want to live. I don't want to compete in the arms race of software and I can do this widget or I can do that module. For our business, I want data, and I want to know where it is and how it can help the clients.
Jack, I could probably spend days, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be calling you back, because my feeling is as these events globally unfold, as situations unfold, anytime you have what I call social volatility, I'd really like to kind of get your input on some of this stuff, because it's one thing to read the headline and say, hey, this crap's going on, everyone's freaking out. But then interpreting the data and being able to say, okay, listen, this is what we need to do and how we need to do it, I think could be very helpful to a lot of viewers out there to kind of remove or at least address maybe some of the answers they may be looking for in the future.
Certainly.
I want to thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Take care.
Changing the game, shattering expectations, rewriting the rules. Meet the new visionaries, the rebels, the ones who dare to disrupt.
When you're on a show like this, we're always talking about disruption.
The Disruptors. From the Fontainebleau Las Vegas Resort.